Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday morning. Happy to have you here, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time as we get rolling on the show. That'll be a good bit of ACC basketball, kind of previewing this weekend, looking back at a critical loss in ACC play for SMU, which was a critical win in ACC play for the Cal Bears at home on Wednesday night in a late night game. If you were on the East Coast watching that and you're in this chat right now, if you're Jerry Morphew, being up and at it this morning with us here on All Access AM, you are just in for a Thursday. I feel like late night game for SMU out there on their own Central Time, finishing up that game around 11 or so. And the Mustangs did fall in that game. And we'll get to the Wednesday night reaction from ACC basketball, but we'll also look ahead to what is a packed slate on Saturday, including Virginia, Duke. I also am going to take a little moment here and take you back to the end of the 2025 season in football. What were the standings looking like? Where are opportunities for teams to take a stock up in 2026? And some teams just take a step back. I'm going to highlight a couple on each side of that for you guys and kind of give my early take ahead of spring ball. But of course, one of those teams that I think we're all going to have our eyes squarely on as far as how they replace some elite talent, and they have brought in some key pieces to do that, is the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And we're excited to have Kelly Quinlan join us at 8:45 a.m. Central Time. So excited to have Kelly on. He runs the Jackets Online site for us on the On3 Rivals Network. Does a terrific job. If you're a Georgia Tech fan and you're not subscribed, you could subscribe to his website. It is awesome. The work that they put out there. I was reading over the mailbag before getting going on the show and just kind of familiarizing myself with maybe what is the latest news in Kelly Quinlan's world. Well, we'll find out at 8:45 a.m. Central Time here on All Access AM. And we're presented by our friends at Horn Legend this morning. Of course, Horn Legend is unveiling a new line of polos, of jackets, of vests. Those were the things that they highlighted for me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take you up on some of those things that you highlighted, and got a couple new polos coming my way, and hooked up our friends Dean Rolski and Hayden Howerton, who help us out on the SMU side of things on my end of the world, covering the Mustangs with some new gear. So we appreciate our friends at Horn Legend for sponsoring the Thursday show, as they always do, and they are presenting sponsors. So make sure you go check out their updated line of so many different polos and pullovers and vests for your college teams. But also, again, you're looking at springtime, you're looking at that maybe Easter holiday, maybe you want to look good for St. Patrick's Day coming up. Guess what? They've got an incredible line of green themed polos, so you can make sure that you are not getting pinched or anything like that. Their green shamrock and clover set that they've got, just awesome stuff from our friends at Horn Legend, and they are going to have you hooked up for that. Of course, if you're looking to get in the Mardi Gras spirit a little late, they've also got that as well on the polo side of things. But they just unveiled a whole new line of kind of your regular polos that, whether it be performance or another style, you can get just in time for spring. As temperatures for us here in Dallas, where I am at, you're starting to look at 80s now. I mean, it's going to be 81 degrees today. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be patio weather. Well, some people can do the pullover, which I've got on right now, but you can also go and get the polos and really look the part as well. So make sure you check out our friends at Horn Legend. They support the Thursday show, and we appreciate them for all they do for us at All Access AM. Let's get going here. Wednesday night in ACC play, 3 games that were on the slate, and two of the 3 that I would say not really interesting in a sense, because either they didn't have major impact on the standings and who's going to the NCAA tournament, and one that did. Let's start though quickly here. Boston College takes down Wake Forest at home. BC moves to just 3-12 in ACC play, 10-18 overall. Wake Forest, just after the news drops, and this is always an interesting one where you see news leak or get dropped that Steve Forbes is returning. Well, what happens? They go on the road at Boston College and they suffer their 10th ACC loss of the year. They're now 5-10 overall in league play, 14-14 on the year. BC, just their third win in league play. It comes right after the news that Steve Forbes is going to be retained. That broke a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 game losing streak for the Eagles. So Aiden Shaw got the game-winning basket in this one. So congratulations to him for stepping up. But just not a great game by any means for Wake Forest to drop, no matter just how kind of down they are overall. You don't want to see that, especially again, right after the news coming out that Steve Forbes is going to return, expected to return for that 7th season, barring a major surprise. Stanford did get a 75-67 win over Pitt. Pitt just 3-12 in ACC play, 10-18 overall. Stanford improves to 17-11 in overall, and then 6-9 in ACC play. Abuka Corey, 34 points, continues to be dominant, had six assists. He is such a fun watch. If you guys have stayed up late from time to time and watched what he brings to the table for the Cardinal, it's really impressive. And Stanford gets a nice, solid home win. They now welcome SMU on Saturday. We'll talk about kind of what that game means for the Mustangs and what the implications are with that game. Now, in particular, that SMU went to Cal, and very similar to the football team, just kind of walked their way through this game. And lo and behold, they were right in it to the end, just like the football team, but came out on the losing side, 73-69. This was probably, I would say this is the most disappointing loss for SMU of the season. You could probably go back and look at the LSU game on a neutral site, so to speak, even though it was down in New Orleans, and you could sit there and say, okay, that's an LSU team that is not really that good. I mean, they're 65th in the net right now. Cal is at least a bubble team. Syracuse is almost, I don't know, like you could put this up against the Syracuse game, but I just SMU at least like showed up offensively fairly consistently, and it was 79-78 loss. It was the first time going to the Dome, so it's just kind of a different feel. Maybe this is still a quad one loss for SMU. And for those of you who listen to us on the ACC side and you're just like, okay, this is an ACC pod, I do cover SMU. I went to SMU. That's what I do, covering SMU for On3 and Rivals at on theponyexpress.com. And this game, when you looked at this road trip, that West Coast swing that everybody talks about, and we saw UNC trip up out there. We've seen other teams get in a very, very tight battle or flat out lose out there out west. You rarely see teams just make mincemeat of it and go 2-0 and sail through the Bay Area with smooth sailing. And SMU went out there last year and beat Cal, and then they went to Stanford and lost. And I just felt like going into this game, you would have seen an SMU team that was very in control of their start. And what I mean by that is that they were at least going to come out with some fire, some energy, coming off of a routine win over Boston College, one that they had to handle business in the second half and really take off, but one that was not particularly close in the end. And you build your confidence off Louisville, and this is just kind of the story with SMU this year. And to an extent, this is product of being in the ACC in a competitive conference, and you're playing a team on the bubble who has everything to play for. Joe Lunardi said that this was the most important home game for Cal in almost a decade. So, and Cal came out and played like it. They kind of got up early. SMU was able to battle back, and it was I thought a really good basketball game, except for the fact that when you watched SMU get to the free throw line, they missed 15 free throws on the night. That is insanity. I've never recalled that in my 10 plus years covering SMU that they had a game like that. And beyond disappointing if you're SMU to have that type of a performance with a game that had so much on the line in a sense. You know, you had so many opportunities to win this game. You had so many reasons why. Okay, you were trailing by 5 at half, but you're certainly in it. You know, first half you could kind of blame the offense not waking up. The team still shot 48% from the field, but had 6 turnovers. So it's kind of okay, not perfect, not great. But they also were 1 for 4 from the free throw line. So it could have been closer. There are just so many things that you're sitting there like, okay, this team will wake up. They're a veteran team. Well, you add up all the missed free throws. Certainly the difference in the game, a 4-point loss. They missed 15 of them. I can't believe you're sitting there 11 of 26 from the line. So you got your opportunities. You got to the free throw line, which I think when you look back on it, and Andy Enfield said after the game that he felt like Boopy Miller was fouled on the final drive that he had to the rim. And I would argue he's right. But when you had 26 tries at it, I think the refs had certainly maybe put it in their mind that, okay, they're going to go ISO. They're going to try to maybe draw this foul or what have you. And we've also called a bunch of fouls, you know, that have benefited SMU. So, I mean, uh, Day Ames, fouled out of this ball game, and I thought when he fouled out, I said, "Wow, that was a one really. It was kind of a stupid foul." But I thought that was going to be the moment where SMU would put it away and take care of business, and Boobie Miller wouldn't have to deal with him out there, and it'd be Justin Pippen. And well, Justin Pippen stepped up and he finished 6 of 7 from the line and made critical free throws down the stretch as SMU had to extend the game once they went 2 for 1 and things like that. So this is a really disappointing loss for SMU. I think just because to whittle it down to free throws, I mean, just an embarrassing effort from the line. And I know there's a lot of talk about playing at Cal and how it is an interesting place for opponents to take free throws and they don't particularly shoot them well there. But this is a team that is a lot better from the free throw line than they showed at Cal. And you make a few of them, and at least you're playing a different ball game, right? Like even when they end up having Deron Pierre Jr. Drive it to the basket, he gets fouled, he hits 2 free throws to bring it within one. If you make one other free throw at some other point in the game, you're sitting there tied, and you're playing a different game. So very disappointing for SMU in that respect. I think looking at the stat sheet, you'd sit here and say, oh, SMU would have comfortably won this game. I mean, they out rebounded them. Points off turnovers. Cal kind of took advantage. You could argue SMU really took advantage, scoring 12 on just 8 turnovers. The points in the paint SMU won, the fast break points, a lot of the usual things that SMU likes to win. They did, but they just had 13 assists on 25 made baskets. Still like not awful, but that was just kind of the ball game that they were in. And they had John Pierre go 4 of 11. Boopy Miller shot 50%, not bad at all. But they just really missed BJ Edwards, who went down with an ankle injury at the end of the first half. He suffered it under the basket. It hit the supporter, and Andy Enfield said, "We'll see." He had ice on it. He did not play in the second half. A major loss. 34 minutes of your rotation just taken from you right there. He finished 16 minutes on the night. He had 5 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, and just would have at least made things happen, I think. And you miss him, and you miss your leadership and all of that BJ Edwards delivers. So that is now the most critical storyline to watch if you're an SMU fan. Is BJ Edwards, will he be available Saturday? BJ's a really tough kid, young man, now veteran, super veteran on this team. I would keep your expectations fairly low. I don't think, judging by the initial reaction of Andy Enfield in the postgame press conference, maybe they don't have to play him down the stretch here. Maybe they are in position, especially if they can find a way to win at Stanford, that they can save him for the ACC tournament. That might be the wise move. But SMU I don't think they're going to end up getting too docked by this loss as far as their net. They entered the game at 31st in the net. They had a good situation in that regard following their win over Louisville and then taking care of business against BC. And they're squarely in the NCAA tournament. They were an 8 seed at most places going into this game. They lose a quad one game, and they lose it by 4 without one of the best defensive guards in the ACC. So I don't know how the committee is going to look back on this one. It'll certainly impact seeding. You go at Stanford now on Sunday. That's a quad one opportunity. Then you play Miami, which is a quad 2 game at home. And then you play Florida State on the road, another quad 2 opportunity on the road. And it's interesting just how these quads are, you see the way Florida State's playing and you're like, okay, you're probably more worried about that road game, but it's a quad 2 game. So we'll see if FSU can creep back up into that quad 1 opportunity. But it is a really disappointing loss for SMU because they had so much there. Now, if you're a Cal fan, and I'm sorry for going more in depth on SMU, but for Cal, I mean, Jaron Keele was Sagatpatelli was there hyping up the basketball team. I mean, they were into it out there out west for that, primetime tip off for Cal fans. But to come away with this win for Mark Madsen is huge. They enter the game 57th in the net. They are on the bubble. They are right now, and it'll be interesting to watch the net and see how far it jumps up. They still have a tough road to getting into the NCAA tournament. Cal does, I think, look at the Sunday slate, and they've got Pitt, so they do have an opportunity to win there. If they can close with a 4-0 record, which is going to be attainable with Pitt, Georgia Tech, and Wake Forest, and you have Pitt at home, and then you go out east and you face a Georgia Tech team and you face a Wake Forest team, they're going to close on a pretty good hot streak here. They have an opportunity to go into the ACC tournament with 7 straight wins. And you've got to give them a lot of credit for being mentally prepared and ready to go for SMU, because once they got by that, now you can sit there and say, okay, SMU now sits in their world. They sit at 8-7 in league play, and for Cal, they're now sitting at 8-7 as well. Well, now the tiebreaker goes to Cal as well. So this is a major, seeding type of game and win for Cal in that respect, because now Cal can be above SMU in the in the seedings. Now it still means they meet in the 8-9, but when we were projecting out SMU's type of seeds earlier this week on the Pony Express, you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, if SMU can beat Cal and get by that, then you've created this wall of separation. You've created this line where, and I was having this conversation with somebody last night, the ACC tournament for reporters is so tough because you're 2 weeks out here. So your prime, airplane, hotels, all that stuff. And SMU was sitting, probably going into this road trip saying, okay, there's a real world where SMU could maybe be squarely in that 7 seed, maybe with, maybe if UNC loses to Louisville and then Louisville suffers another loss, you're looking at, okay, maybe you're a 6 seed, but now they're sitting at a 9 seed, and then they will go and face Florida State again and have a chance for the Seminoles to really hurt them in seeding. So now you're in this really wide range of variables where you could be playing on that Tuesday, March 10th. And that is not where you want to be playing with those first round of games in the ACC tournament if things really go south here for SMU, which if BJ Edwards misses the next 3 games, that's a possibility. But if they can get him back and get him back for next week when they face Miami and FSU, that would obviously be a big boost. But for Cal, this puts them even higher into the bubble situation, and you've got to be feeling fairly good about, I would think being a really strong seed in the NIT at minimum. Mark Madsen and the job that I think they continue to do to have their players ready. I mean, adjusting with Day Ames out, Justin Pippen stepping up in a big way with those free throws down the stretch. They did such a good job. Lee Dort had 10 rebounds, led all players with 10 rebounds as he made his return to the floor. And a veteran guy that, I mean, if I recall last year, I feel like he had a big game against SMU, and really was able to make an impact in a big way. And I'll try to look that up. Finish well, no, 9 minutes on the evening, 4 points, 4 rebounds. So good job there, Billy. But he is somebody that a lot of people obviously talk about. Really just impressive player as far as how he's able to affect the rim and all those things. And he made things difficult at times for the front court. But SMU got 11 points from Samet Yigitolu. He started out hot, had 11 points and 8 rebounds, was able to make an impact. I thought SMU went away from that a little bit in the second half. Lee Dort came off the bench to help in that respect. They just did a really good job playing hard as a unit and sticking with it. Now they got huge games from Justin Pippen, Chris Bell, John Camden made some key free throws down the stretch as well. And that's like Mark Madsen, the player, the energy that he brought back in his day. Like you could see that they were ready to go for this game, and they did a really nice job. And now you're sitting here in your SMU, you're legitimately right in the middle of the pack. Cal, you're in the now just upper middle pack. If you could kind of draw up a game that really hurt SMU the most as far as losing out of these two, it's the Cal game. And the front end of this trip is never the way to start off. So SMU has to come up with a big answer against Stanford on Sunday or Saturday and bounce back. They have to. They're still squarely in the NCAA tournament. They would have to have a complete and total collapse down the stretch here to miss out, which would really hurt, obviously for a lot of reasons. But you're looking at a team in SMU that squandered a golden opportunity to kind of one deal a death blow to maybe Cal's NCAA tournament hopes. And instead, now you've given Cal momentum down the stretch. You've let them jump you in seeding. And Cal has kind of one of the, I mean, outside of facing Boston College, you're sitting there saying, could you draw up a better 3 remaining games for Cal to make their push? And also maybe even if Louisville loses again, maybe Cal finds a way to jump them. So just a really good situation for Cal to be in now. They needed that win. They got it. They played with the right intensity, but at the same time, don't let this loss for SMU. Don't ignore the fact that BJ Edwards was out. Don't ignore the fact that they missed 15 free throws in a 4-point loss on the road. They have to get some things corrected against Stanford. And once again, I thought there was more creativity. Like Boopy Miller actually got to the basket this time. You could say he got fouled, but once again, SMU's late game set involves Boopy Miller, and it falls short. So they've got to figure some things out there down the stretch. And but Cal gets a huge win for them, and metrics wise, they should get a decent boost to help themselves maybe get into that Final Four of the NCAA tournament. So keep an eye on Cal down the stretch. It should be fun to watch. With that, let's go to our Saturday slate. But before we do that, I do want to remind you guys about our friends at Socorro Tequila. And Socorro's Tequila, if you were an SMU fan last night, could have been a great friend of yours. Could have helped you through a lot of what was going on out west and working through that, so to speak. But in all seriousness, Socorro Tequila is an award-winning tequila company. Agave water and yeast. That's what they put into their tequila. Made in Jalisco, Mexico. Incredible brand that we're so proud to be partnered with. They are on an award-winning roll. They do also offer free shipping on 3 bottles or more. So try the Añejo, the Blanco, the Reposado. Tell you what, I really enjoy the Reposado with just a little bit of water, lime juice or lemon juice. Tough to beat. And they do a great job of putting together a really clean tasting tequila that you can enjoy. And so if you're a tequila enjoyer, I mean, this is your next one you've got to try. So make sure you check out our friends at Socorro Tequila. Go to socorrotequila.com and get free shipping on 3 bottles or more. Appreciate Socorro for supporting us at All Access AM. We will be joined by Kelly Quinlan here for some of you who are just joining the show. We're going to be joined by Kelly coming up at 8:45 a.m. Central Time. So excited to have Kelly join us. We'll talk Georgia Tech, how the Yellow Jackets are positioning themselves going into the 2026 season. Saturday's action for ACC basketball, another fun one. Virginia Duke in Cameron Indoor, 11 a.m. Central Time on ESPN. A massive, massive game, nearly a top 10 matchup, nearly a top 10, but one for Virginia that is so important. You look at the standings for league play, Virginia just one game back of Duke, sitting at 13-2 in league play, Duke at 14-1. You've got an opportunity here if you're UVA to really help yourself in seeding. You're squarely in the NCAA tournament, but also this is your crack at Pitt. This is your opportunity here, or this is your crack at Duke. Did I say Pitt? This is your opportunity to take it to Duke on their own floor and move yourselves up in seeding and also hold the tiebreaker. You might find yourself as the number one seed in the ACC tournament. Massive game for UVA. Ryan Odom, the way he can get his team dialed in on the floor and the way he teaches the game, so impressive. And Duke with Cameron Boozer and what they've got going on, they are tough to pick against in this one. But I will be very intrigued to see how UVA comes out in this one. They're coming off a nice win over NC State, one that they were fairly in control of most of the game. They dominated NC State in the first half defensively. We talked about that on the Wednesday show. And now you got to go to Cameron Indoor and you've got to be ready for that storm early on. You know, that initial a round of emotions of playing in that place. And if you weather it, which Virginia, I think, does a good of a job as anybody at staying even keeled, which is why nobody talks about them nationally. And they do have an ability to weather those storms. And you look up and they're 25-3 or so overall. Like I said, 13-2 in league play. They have sat through all of the Miami run, the NC State run, the UNC, the Louisville, the Clemson being right there at the top of the league, all those things throughout the season. And you just look up and they're one game back. And if they win this game and then they take care of business down the stretch, they're the number one seed in the ACC tournament. And they could very well be peaking at the right time. I expect this one to be close. I still think Duke gets this done. Maybe a 5-point win for the Blue Devils seems about right. But it wouldn't shock me if UVA was able to make some magic happen in Cameron this weekend. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of opinions about that from the Duke fans that may or may not tune in. But that is the marquee game Saturday in ACC play. In the same time slot, though, NC State at Notre Dame, you want to think that Will Wade and company are going to bounce back against the Irish up north. You get Florida State at Georgia Tech. Florida State also looking to bounce back in that game. Both of those games at 11 a.m. NC State at Notre Dame on CW. Florida State at Georgia Tech on ACC Network. You get to that 1 o'clock window, a major seeding game here. Louisville at Clemson, 1 p.m. ESPN2. This is a Clemson program that is slipping in a big way. They have not shot the three well. And I think watching that Florida State game in particular unfold, they were not in good. They just didn't do a lot of things well. And, when you look at what Florida State made them do, they packed it in and then they made Clemson shoot threes. Tiger shot 33 threes. I believe that was their highest number in this season, maybe in league play. And, they weren't able to make them at a high percentage. They made just 10. Still, for as many as you shot, you'd think, okay, that's not bad, but just a 30% clip, not enough, not good enough for that game. They're looking to get off of this skid that they're on, and Louisville, a team that certainly wants to bounce back in a big way. Following their loss at UNC, a tough one that they really wanted to have, especially with UNC down Caleb Wilson. But Clemson sitting here on a 4-game skid, they're looking to avoid it making 5, and they're at home. And Little John, they've lost Duke, they've lost to they've lost to Virginia Tech, they've lost to Florida State now at home, and by a combined 15 points in those games. So they are trying to get back on the right side of things at home in a very critical game for seeding. These two teams are right next to each other in the seeding. Clemson 4 games back of the top spot. Louisville 5 games back. If Clemson wins this game, this is key because Clemson could say Duke beats UNC down the stretch. Clemson's above UNC. NC State, they still have, I think they have an interesting couple of opportunities down the stretch here. They've got Duke. So there you go. So if NC State drops another one down the stretch here, Clemson's going to be sitting there, lo and behold, as the 4 seed, if my math kind of holds, if everything else kind of holds there. So this is a major, major game for Clemson in seeding. They've got to get this one for the Tigers. They've got to get it for a multitude of reasons, but they are skidding in a big way. They're 10-5 in league play, 20-8 overall, and need this one. Louisville needs it too for NCAA tournament seeding as well. They would like to obviously help themselves a little bit. Nice quad 1 opportunity there on the road. Boston College also in the 1 o'clock slot, taking on Miami. Miami certainly on ACC Network, hoping to have a little bit of a showcase here of how they've come. I think this is a big opportunity for kind of blowout city. BC was a nice story beating Wake Forest the other night, but certainly one with Miami facing SMU on the road. They want to take care of business. Jay Lucas does a nice job getting his guys focused. Clearly, they've got SMU and Louisville next week. This is a nice opportunity for, Miami to kind of flex their muscle a little bit going into those 2 matchups that are critical as well for seeding and, certainly for kind of putting the finishing touches here on ACC play. Pitt at Cal, we talked about that. Major game for Cal, the first of 3 games that are very gettable for Cal. I mean, if Cal doesn't go 3-0 down the stretch here, one, they're going to miss out on the NCAA tournament. I don't think there's any doubt in that, but they have an opportunity here to, keep this train rolling and get things in the right situation to, again, keep their NCAA tournament resume nice and shiny, at least here down the stretch. Their overall resume needs Cal taking care of business against Pitt, 3 p.m. ACC Network. So make sure you're following that one for you guys, keeping an eye on the bubble there. Syracuse at Wake Forest, 4:45 p.m. on the CW. I do like how the CW kind of has some gaps there in ACC play. So they do get that broadcast. That is a game that a lot of people just, you'll be tuned out on both sides of those. But we'll be keeping an eye on that just to kind of see if Syracuse can get a win at Wake. Can Wake bounce back? A lot of kind of coach watching, I think, from those 2 programs down the stretch here. Are you you're not feeling great about where your program's going, but do you get any sort of, okay, all right, they kind of closed well? I mean, Wake on the wrong side of that, no doubt, but can Syracuse get on the right side of that is something I'm watching very closely here. They've lost 2 straight to Duke and Carolina. SMU at Stanford, 5 p.m. ACC Network. Look, this is a 7 o'clock prime time, ACC Network game for the Mustangs. Well, I guess it's sorry, everybody. Time zones really struggle. Ask Kelly about that. I struggle with them. 3 o'clock Pacific time game for SMU. It is a 5 p.m. Central time game. There are no excuses for SMU in this one. You've got to come out, even with BJ Edwards out, and you've got to beat Stanford. Boopie Miller, Jerron Pierre Jr., Jermaine O'Neal, however you let Abuka Okorie go, if you want to let him light you up for 30-something points, that's fine. If you can hold the rest of the Stanford team in check, that's fine. You've got to find a way to get this win and bounce back. Chris Bell is a threat. Or excuse me, not Chris Bell. Was looking at Cal there in their box score, but Chisholm Okpara, another kind of player that I think Stanford has leaned on a little bit, but has been out. Benny Gilar, another one who's in double figures. They've got to step up for Stanford, but for SMU, they're in they've got to get this win. I mean, they have to beat Stanford and they have to beat Florida State. You could kind of take or leave the Miami game, but you can't finish 0-4 down the stretch. And it starts this final game by game situation, but it starts with a win over Stanford for SMU. Stanford can only kind of just play for next season, I think, at this point. I don't see them getting into the NIT. Could be wrong on that. I don't follow the NIT seeding too closely, but a big opportunity for SMU in what'll be uh, uh, an emotional game, I think, for SMU, just to kind of get over that and be missing most likely BJ Edwards. If he plays, I mean, kudos to him. But finally, Virginia Tech at North Carolina. UNC, a team that has really fought off the Caleb Wilson injury fairly well. They've won 3 of their last 4. This is another critical one at home. You got another home game Tuesday night against Clemson, where you're going to be honoring your seniors and you're going to have an opportunity to kind of close things out the right way before you go on the road to face Duke and Cameron Indoor. But UNC has been navigating all this really well. This has been quite the season for UNC, and for Virginia Tech, this is your last ditch effort here to position yourself. They're on the outside looking at it. I don't think they're going to get it, but this is kind of your last major opportunity in a sense to get a signature win before you face Virginia in your final game of the year. But you've got to close 3-0. It's doable. Mike Young and his team, I mean, they can do it, but it's a tough spot to be in. I expect UNC to take care of business Saturday night to close out the Saturday slate. So with that, guys, we do have about 10 minutes here before we are joined by Kelly Quinlan. So excited about that. But let's take you back to the ACC standings and how they closed. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, we appreciate you. But I like looking at ESPN's. They lay it out pretty well. They give us a pretty good view and vantage point on how things played out. And for me, looking at the standings here, I sit there and I say, okay, you're gonna be, I think sitting here watching a UVA SMU championship game. Nope. You're going to be sitting here watching Virginia take on Duke, and Duke is going to win the ACC championship. This was how things finished. Of course, Virginia took on Duke, and Duke ended up winning the ACC championship. So let's look at the top half here, and let's start with all the 1 and 2 loss teams in league play last year, because of course you don't get a win-loss credit in league play for losing or winning your conference championship game. When I look at the teams that, and I hate to do this, but let's start with the 2 teams that I feel like are going to take a step back next year. I think this is kind of an easy pick, and I think both teams that played for the ACC championship last year are going to take steps back. And I like the idea of Bo Pribula. I also know that Virginia lost a good bit off of that veteran team that won the ACC championship and went to the ACC championship. And I think, despite the fact that Chandler Morris is suing for another year of eligibility, they are going to be in a new situation. And I just don't think they're going to have as much of the magic that Chandler Morris provided. And I think the effort that they've put into transfer portal additions and the needs of Tony Elliott and this football program have got to be commended. They've got to be commended. They've got to be applauded for how they have addressed so many needs for him. And they got the proof of concept. And when you look around college athletics and you see the teams that invest, and Duke is right there, and they're the team that I see taking a step back too. I mean, no offense to Walker Eget, but even you heard Connor O'Neill yesterday with us here on All Access AM. I mean, he's coming off of a knee surgery as well, and he's expected to be your guy. There's a lot to handle there if you are Duke. But for UVA, your schedule, you've got to play NC State in Brazil to lead off your season. So who knows what you're going to get with a brand new quarterback, Bo Pribula or Eli Holstein, but probably Bo Pribula. And you're playing that game week 0, again, in Brazil. You then get a week off. Then you get Norfolk State. Then you get West Virginia. Who knows kind of what West Virginia is going to be? Rich Rod over there. I don't think he's doing a bad job by any means. I think he's doing the best he can. That UVA football program or that West Virginia football program just has a little bit of a different feel than it did when he was there last time. They went 4-8 last year. It's kind of a total rebuild in a sense. You get Delaware, but then you go at Florida State. What does that game look like? How do you match up? FSU, is going to be trying to avenge what happened to them last year in Charlottesville. You have Syracuse. Will Steve Angeli be that dude next year? Then you go at SMU. I mean, the challenge SMU can give anybody at home. This is right around that time where SMU beat Miami last year. You get Duke then at home. You go at Wake Forest. What do they look like? They could be another step back team. But I think they, again, were a little bit of a product of their schedule. So don't get me wrong. That's why they're not my team that's going to take a huge step back in a sense, or one of the two teams I'm picking. Then you get Cal, Jaron Kiawasagapatelli. You get UNC. What does year 2 of Bill Belichick look like? Then you get at Virginia Tech, and who knows how James Franklin has that team playing so late in the year. And so I think the schedule for UVA doesn't play out that well, both in, like pretty much from the start, that you got to go all the way to Brazil, and then you got to face a West Virginia team that's interesting. And, I don't even think, I mean, they have their bye is at September 5th, and then they get one in November. So that kind of helps with the week 0 game. But man, you're just in such a different world this 2026 season for UVA. They went 7-1 in league play. They went 11-3 overall. I think looking at that schedule, if they go 7-5 overall, you're happy, because I really think it's that big of a jump up in schedule if you're looking at UVA. So keep an eye on them. They were atop the ACC standings. I don't think it's controversial to say they're going to take a step back, but also Duke. Duke, on the other hand, is certainly one that I'm keeping a close eye on as far as them taking a step back with what they have at quarterback being lost in Darian Mensah. They have Walker Eget, who they're putting a lot of their chips in. But again, 6-2 in league play. They went 9-5 overall, and they almost are similar to Wake Forest, where it's like, okay, they went 9-5. Well, they went 6-2 in league play. Okay, that math doesn't really help at all. You could argue I should be taking, okay. I mean, there's so many 9-win teams in the ACC, though. Like, how do you approach that? But Duke, with their schedule this year, they get Tulane at home. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to get that one done. Then they go at Illinois. That's another challenging opponent. Then they get Stanford at home. You got to think, okay, maybe there's win number 1. William and Mary, maybe they can get that one. They should get that one. Then they get a bye. And then the ACC said, basically, screw you. You're going to play October 10th, October 17th, 24th, 31st, November 7th, November 14th, November 21st, November 28th. Wow, what a stretch. At Georgia Tech, October 10th. North Carolina, again, who knows what they're going to be in year 2 of Bill Belichick. Then at UVA, that's what the kids would call an inflection point for your season. I feel like for both of those programs, how that game goes can impact the rest of it. Then you got to feel good about Boston College. Then you go at NC State, which is just a house of horrors for so many teams. Then you go at Miami. Then you get Clemson, and then you go at Wake Forest. Can Gio Lopez be rolling by then? Can Walter Eget be rolling by then? This is going to be the most challenging coaching experience that I think Manny Diaz will have had so far in Durham. I think the same goes for Johnny Brewer, the offensive coordinator. There's a lot to do for Duke, and they're going to have their hands full. We will get to our teams that will take a step forward in ACC play in just a moment, but we are now very lucky to be joined by Kelly Quinlan of the On3 Rivals Network. And Kelly, cover Georgia Tech for Jackets Online. We appreciate you taking some time out of a busy morning, I'm sure, for you to join the show.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to come on.
And Kelly, let's look back on 2025 really quickly. A historic season, especially for Haynes King and kind of his uh, overall career and just ascending to that Heisman Trophy conversation there for a bit. What are you going to remember as somebody who's covered Georgia Tech now for so long?
It was interesting. There was such a high as they started the season 8-0 and getting everything going, and then the kind of fall off that started in the back half of the season, in the back quarter, and then how it all kind of blew up at the end of the year. I think that's what people are going to remember. Sadly, the mass exodus with Buster Faulkner, and then a couple players leaving, including the heir apparent quarterback for 2026 and Aaron Philo going to Florida. I think that left a bad taste in people's mouths, and it kind of washes out some of the stuff like beating Clemson and being ranked so high and finishing the season ranked actually. It was the best season they've had since 2016, but it was such a scuffly finish, and really it was close. I mean, Dean Patterson was like a fingertip away from catching the game winning touchdown in the bowl game. Would have got them to 10 wins. Instead, they throw an interception on the next play. It was just, it was like this close to having a special year, but it was good progress. I guess it's just disappointing they didn't get over the hump for tech people.
Yeah. I mean, there were so many moments that you're going to look back on and say, okay, I remember when that happened, and so many opportunities, even bouncing back so close in that game against Georgia at the end of the year that they could have had to kind of put at least kind of a bow on that regular season in a good way. But let's go to Brent Key, his offseason. A lot of staff changes, a lot of decisions he made, a lot of decisions other people made to leave the program. Obviously, you mentioned Buster Faulkner. What's the staff shakeup been like, and how's Brent Key adjusted?
It was a lot.
Yeah.
They made pretty serious changes. They had a whole fiasco with Blake Gideon, who ended up going back to Texas to be Will Muschamp's right hand man on the defense. He was the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech, and things just kind of went south. Especially with the defense during the backslide in the back half of the season. So you lose both coordinators. He brings in George Godsey to be the OC, who was a good friend of his and former teammate, and then you bring in Jason Seymour, who had been on the staff with Brent when Brent was an assistant here, and then as when he was the interim coach, he left to go to Marshall to become a defensive coordinator. And it's been, it feels like Brent's kind of reaching back into for people who are loyal to him and wanting a little of that after I think he felt, I guess, maybe disrespected by Buster Faulkner and those guys and how they handled their business, and even Blake Gideon to an extent. So that's been sort of the reset. I like this. He hired Jimmy Smith, who's running backs coach. He's wanted to work for him. He tried to hire him twice before, so that was a good hire. And I think they've kind of struck a little bit of a balance between improving the recruiting, which is something Brent wanted to do, and then having good coaches. So I think that they've improved the staff in that way. It'll be interesting to see what the offense looks like. The defense has basically nowhere to go but up. The offense, it'll be interesting to see what it looks like with George Godsey and Chris Winkie, the one returning coach, is kind of the brain trust of that, along with Brent Key.
And looking at the transfer portal hall, Alberto Mendoza is going to get a lot of the talk. Of course, we know of Graham Knowles here covering things from the Dallas area. What's the quarterback position look like for the Yellow Jackets moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. They brought in Alberto, but there's actually a guy that redshirted this year they really like, Grady Adamson. He's from Oklahoma. They love that kid. Oklahoma tried to come in and get him late 2 years ago, and Grady's a guy who's going to come in and push Alberto. And those two, I think Graham's kind of maybe the little bit of the outsider on that. He's been in the program for a few years now. It doesn't seem like maybe he has the tool chest for what they're looking for in terms of a mobile quarterback and those things. He runs okay, but not great. Big arm, kind of a big dude. I'm curious if he kind of takes a step forward, but I think it really comes down to, can Mendoza secure the job, and then if Adamson can push him off. Because if Adamson pushes him off, I think they're in really good shape too. That's a good sign there. Or if Mendoza wins the job very solidly, I think you just want someone to separate themselves. It doesn't matter which one it is.
And when the transfer portal haul came, you mentioned the defense having only one place to go but up. What did you feel like they did in the portal defensively to give you maybe some confidence? Is there confidence that they're going to see that improvement? Because I feel like watching Georgia Tech's defense at times last year is very similar to watching SMU's at times. You're sitting there saying, "How did that just happen? How did that get given up? How did we see third and long turn into a first down and the chains keep rolling for the offense on the opposing side?" But this was a team that I felt like up front had some nice pieces last year, but just didn't put it together for the most part.
Yeah, when you look at the defense, they needed help at corner. The corner play was not good. They couldn't play man to man. They didn't feel comfortable playing that. They went out and got two corners. They got Jalen Bakwe from Alabama, and they got Jonas Duclona from USF, who was really talented there, good starter. That kind of jump starts that room a little bit, gives them two pro prospects at that position. Bakwe gives them good length. And then the other big thing was finding pass rushers. And they have a giant room of defensive and edge guys. They brought in Jordan Walker from Rutgers. They brought in Noah Carter from Alabama, Tajay McCoy from Oklahoma State. They went and just loaded up on these dudes to try to fix that aspect of their defense, which was a problem. And then, they rebuilt defensive tackle a little bit with Vincent Carroll Jackson from UConn and Tawfiq Thomas from Colorado to try to shore that up, because they had four senior interior guys that all graduated, moved on. So yeah, it's going to be different. I think the big thing with Jason is knowing Jason Seymour really well now over the years, and as a guy I stayed in touch with even after he left. Jason wants to be more aggressive defensively. He's going to get after it a little more. They're not going to play as conservatively, and I think the conservative play kind of got them a lot last year. And I think that the guys lost their mojo, lost their confidence in what Blake Gideon was doing. And once you lose that, you lost 80% of the battle. Like, if guys just aren't confident in the plan, it's just going to get worse and worse. And I think that now they have a plan they like. I think they can, and a guy that knows how to execute. I think they're in better shape. The linebacker play needs to step up, but they had plenty of talent, and those guys were good 2 years ago with Tyler Santucci's in the NFL now. I think there's an opportunity for those guys to kind of reset themselves as well. So I like what they're doing. I think it's stepping in the right direction. It's just a question of, you got to see on the field, and they have a hard schedule, so that's going to play into it too.
As somebody who watched Jalen Ibakwe coming up in the high school ranks, I mean, he's an athlete that you take, 10 times out of 10, especially, getting him from an Alabama and a guy that I watched, kind of almost go into the portal last year and then ends up at Georgia Tech. I mean, those are the type of players that I feel like can make a difference for Jason Seymour and what he's trying to do defensively. Just from, you can kind of maybe trust him to lock down kind of his man and stick with him, and the aggressive nature that you've got to play with on defense like college football these days, with so many defensive ends rolling through. I like what Georgia Tech did in the transfer portal. I also like them picking up Justice Haynes, grabbing him from Michigan, a highly talked about transfer edition as far as the recruiting background he comes from. Again, kind of the highly toutedness to kind of maybe energize the offensive side a little bit after what was a tumultuous start to the offseason. That was a major piece for them to add.
Yeah, it's funny. Veron. So I went to University of Georgia, which some people know.
Okay.
I catch a little grief for that. But I've been covering Georgia Tech since '09. But I covered Georgia when I was in school and the first few years out of college. And I covered Veron. I knew him a little bit when we were in college together, roughly around the same age. And so it was very funny to see his son end up at Georgia Tech after all that. And I spent time covering Bama a little bit. And so I covered his saga as a high school recruit a little bit as well. So it's been very funny how that it's like kind of a circle thing. It's one of those things I always joke about, like Jason Seymour coming back. I was like, whenever someone leaves, I always joke with them, "Hey, the way this business works, brother, I will see you again at some point." And with Justice, they worked that out completely and got him with the no contact. I mean, it was the ultimate sort of portal move that you see a lot of big schools do. They pulled that off over Michigan and got him, and he's a bell cow running back. He's a guy. He was, if he plays a full season last year, he's probably in the mix for the Doak Walker. Like he was really good and really effective. And Brent Key really wanted a big bell cow back to ride. They have Malachi Hosley back, who's really talented, and so they have one of the best running back rooms in the country right now. They have a lot of talented guys. Chad Alexander redshirt last year. He was the number 2 back 2 years ago for them. He drops to third, and then they have some young guys they really like as well. So I think they're in great shape. He wants to run the football. They want to control the clock, and this gives you that piece. And as you're breaking in a new quarterback, it is a huge security blanket for him to have two really proven running backs, a third guy that's pretty talented, and you can kind of lean on that at times. And that's what they want to do. They want to control the ball. They open up the season with, I think, on paper right now, I think three top 25 teams, whatever that matters at this point. But you have some tough games in there. Louisville, obviously Tennessee in week 2, and then at Georgia to end the season. So I think there's a lot that you need to kind of prepare yourself for in those kinds of games. And a guy who can break a big run is a home run threat is a huge thing for them. And Jamal Haynes, had been kind of their stalwart running back. He just was not himself last year, injuries and things like that. And I think it really takes a lot of the pressure off the offense when you have a guy like Justice who can do some amazing things and be a home run threat.
I saw Caden Proctor at the East West Shrine Bowl a couple of weeks ago, and I've got a picture of him, Justice Haynes, and Caleb Downs outside of the All-American Bowl award banquet there in San Antonio when they were all seniors, and some of them, I think all 3 of them probably went right to college from that event, and it's just cool to see, all of them be, I mean, in various different ways, at the top of their game right now, and certainly Justice has a big chapter to write this season for Georgia Tech, so I'm excited for them. They're all great guys, super nice, and I saw Caden and I was like, hey, this time flies, man. Good luck.
Yep.
It certainly does. So, look, I don't want to. I know we're gonna get you out of here. I do want to ask you this: met Ryan Alpert in person at ACC Media Days last year. He was, a name that was mentioned to me for the SMU job before it went to Damon Evans. Just seems like Tech really hit a home run with Ryan Alpert and kind of his big picture goals. And maybe I'm wrong from your vantage point, but I from an outsider, I think he's doing all the right things. But one, your take on kind of his run so far at Georgia Tech, and then scheduling. Georgia Tech scheduling is very competitive as far as the schedule that they face. Do you see that type of scheduling still sticking through? Because we're seeing SMU play some competitive games in a time when some of these SEC teams are talking about canceling certain big games and things like that.
Yeah. So Ryan's been great. He's a really sharp guy. The thing that people like about him is he lacks a lot of kind of the arrogance you catch from a lot of ADs. He's very down to earth. Will talk to people, talks to you one on one. Not weird about it. Some guys are. It's very
Yeah.
funny you mentioned Damon. Damon's another guy. He was the AD at Georgia when I was covering them. It's another small world guy. Yeah, it's they like scheduling competitively. They added the series with Tennessee home and away this year and next year. Um, they have a series with Bama coming up. They play Georgia every year. So like when you play Georgia every year, if you schedule some other P5 game, especially with the ACC shifting to 9, it really puts the screws on you. As of today, next year, they're scheduled to play Notre Dame, Tennessee, and Georgia, and Hampton. I think the Notre Dame game is gonna get moved from what I've heard. But that kind of shows the aggressive scheduling that they've done over the years. A little overscheduled. 28 it backs back down, but any of these years where they're going to play like a Bama or Notre Dame or Tennessee or multiples of those, That's really kind of an impressive thing. And playing this year, they open with Colorado and then they play Tennessee and Georgia non-conference. They'll play 8 ACC games. So um, it goes to show that they're wanting to compete on the highest level and not afraid to schedule teams. They're not playing Ohio State, but like they're playing. Tennessee's been very good. They're a top 25 program the last few years with Josh Heupel. Obviously, Alabama's Alabama. The Alabama series has been kicked back for 20 years now or something. I mean, that was like one where Nick Saban pushed it back because they want to play Paul Johnson. So we're going back that game. I mean, that game's been pushed back forever. That may even be a different series. That may have been canceled. And then this might even be like a completely different Alabama series. I think the SID was trying to explain that to me one day because it got kicked. The can was kicked so far back. They had the same thing with Ole Miss. They finally played Ole Miss when Jeff was here, Jeff Collins, because that series had been kicked down the road a bunch of times too. So they're not afraid to play people. And I think that is something you want to see versus there's some teams, Wake Forest, that
Yeah, thank
that
you. Yeah, I
that's
just
scheduled
mentioned.
very lightly in the league, and it's kind of offensive when you're jockeying for bowl position, say,
Yeah.
and you end up going to Birmingham like Georgia Tech did 2 years ago, and a team that played, Rice and um, they played one, P4 game, and it was like Illinois or something. Like that's way different than playing the schedule George Tech's been playing. And so I think that there's a lot of credit that goes to that. Even when they were playing, they went through and played like South Florida and UCF, and like
Yep.
they weren't playing the worst of the worst in the G5, G6 schools. Like they were playing legit ones from that going back 10 years. Like they were trying to not just schedule nothing but UMass and Akron, which other people like to do. Like they tried to schedule games that would be competitive and played home and away. They played at UCF, they played at Temple, they played at USF. Like those are games that a lot of other schools won't play, and I think that they deserve some credit for that as well.
Well, we're looking forward to coming out to cover SMU at Georgia Tech. If it's still in 2028, who knows?
Whenever it happens,
Whenever
yes.
it happens, we're excited to get out to Atlanta. That's such a great scene there, and we'll of course have to do some sort of live pod together ahead of that one because SMU fans will love getting out to Atlanta. So, and I know 27, Georgia Tech's scheduled to get out to Dallas. So, we appreciate you having coming on, Kelly. I know it's a busy time, but good luck with the rest of basketball season, and we'll check back in spring ball hopefully.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate Kelly Quinlan for stopping by of Jackets Online. Kelly Quinlan, one of the best covering his team for us on the On3 Rivals Network. Check out his work at Jackets Online. We appreciate him for stopping in here on All Access AM. And look, we've got a couple more minutes in the show. I want to get back to what I was talking about as Kelly popped into the studio. Those teams that are taking a step back, the two that I picked going into that interview with Kelly, that are going to take a step back. Virginia, Duke, don't think that's crazy to say. They had a combined 3 losses in ACC play together. I see them with their quarterback situations, certainly taking a step back. For Duke, UVA is more of a question for me as an overall team. They also, I believe, lost their offensive line coach. I could be wrong on that. To Stanford, I thought he made the move out to the West Coast. But then you get into who can step up, who can elevate. And I look at a team, obviously, like Clemson is going to be one that people talk about. Virginia Tech is a team that people are going to talk about. I think Syracuse, I want to start there. And I was talking with a source of mine in the college football world. Was talking with him last week. And I said, I don't understand what Fran Brown did. Still don't. Some of the moves that Fran Brown made, and it was bad. 3-9 overall. Their one win came at Clemson. Steve Angeli was on fire. They were 3-0. They were rolling. Things were looking up. And he tears his Achilles. And what we told you in the summer, at least on the SMU side of things before this show started, was Ricky Collins was not going to be the guy. He wasn't going to be the guy. That's why they went and got Steve Angeli. It was very apparent. And anybody who had heard me talk about Ricky Collins from the LSU days. It just wasn't going to work. So when they got Steve Angeli, it was, oh, wow, this is interesting. Makes sense. He's going to be the starter. Well, then he takes off. Then they end up changing the entire offensive staff because you can't get a backup quarterback to do what you needed them to do. And it just didn't make sense to me. But I am going to pick Syracuse as my team that I could see being in that, certainly getting to a bowl game, certainly being like in that 4-4, 5-3 range in league play. Of course, now maybe they're one of the teams playing 9. So what is that, 5-4 or 6-3? I could see it because I watched Steve Angeli do what he did. If he's healthy, if he comes back the right way, Syracuse is going to be the team that could go from the bottom right into the conversation in November for an ACC championship game berth. I really believe that. I think watching proven players now, Steve Angeli has to bounce back from his injury, and we'll see what that looks like. But he has at least proven he can be productive. They get a nice warm up with New Hampshire, then they play Cal at home, then they go at Pitt in September, they go at UConn. So they have an interesting start. They go at Virginia, then they face Louisville at home, then they go at UNC, they host SMU, they host Clemson, they go at NC State, and then they finish up with Boston College at on the road, which could be interesting. You never know, even though I don't think BC is going to take a step up. And then you get Notre Dame at home to finish things out. Very interesting. Tough schedule, especially November. If you want to count SMU in that Halloween weekend, those last 5 games, for the last 5, could be really difficult games. I think Syracuse is going to be up to the test. They could start fast. They could be one of the hottest teams in the country once again entering October. If they have a healthy Steve Angeli, it's a big difference. And that'll be something to watch. I think he can elevate them back to bowl game and get Fran Brown back on track. They missed him in a big way, obviously. As far as team that could take the next step up, this is where I struggle, right? I mentioned Clemson. Well, Clemson finished 7-6. Could I see improvement? Yes. Did they also lose a bunch of NFL talent that, despite not producing as a whole unit defensively or offensively the way that they wanted, that's still some pretty elite talent walking out the door. Can Clemson better themselves in 7-6? I think they can. Can they better themselves than 4-4 in league play? We'll find out. Like, this is a Clemson team that I don't know if I'm ready yet to kind of crown. They go at LSU, major opportunity there. Then they get Georgia Southern, they get North Carolina, they go at Cal, then they got Miami. You could have 2 losses by the time October 4th rolls around. Then you get open date. Then you get Charleston Southern. Great scheduling here, by the way. Then you get Virginia. Then you go at Florida State. Then you go at Syracuse. Then you get Georgia Tech, Duke, South Carolina. I mean, if like Clemson should be in that 9-3 range, if you're thinking about it, and their schedule is very gettable. LSU, Miami, really tough tests. You've got Virginia Tech, who could be interesting. You've got Florida State, could be interesting. Georgia Tech could be interesting. Duke, we'll see. I just don't think they're going to have the offensive talent to do it. Then you get South Carolina. The Gamecocks got to bounce back, but you get that one at home to end things. So, I mean, Clemson can be a pick, but, again, what do they look like offensively? Because I think this has a boom or bust potential here offensively. Like, it could be really bad. It could be really good. But you start out at LSU. I think for me, is 7-6 to 9-3 like that big of a jump to 6-2? You could make the argument. So I could see Clemson in that world. I could see, though, Cal taking that next step up. I think Cal is almost, I don't want to say a safer bet, but they're going to have a lot of talent. I like Tosh Lapoy, first-year head coach. Kind of want to see it a little bit, but then you get down into the teams that miss bowl games. Virginia Tech is another easy one to kind of pick here, that they're going to be improved and they're going to make a bowl game. I'm not ready, though, to say they're going 3-9 to 9-3. I could see Virginia Tech finishing in that 500 range, maybe 5-4 in league play, and then ending up in a nice solid bowl game. And that would be a good success for James Franklin. So give me like Clemson, Virginia Tech as my other 2 picks there in kind of a lukewarm way. But both teams have very different levels that they're jumping from in ACC play. I'm not Clemson is going to be in the conference title race because their schedule kind of sets up for them to be. But they're also going to be, I would guess, on the outside looking in because they're going to, I mean, I think it's easy to pick them in the offseason months and months away to lose at Miami. But we'll see. So look, that's our show for today. What hour and 10 minutes. Appreciate you guys being here. Kelly Quinlan was awesome. Can't wait to have him on and appreciate him. Appreciate our sponsors, Horn Legend and Socorro Tequila. Make sure you guys check them out in the podcast episode description and shop their products. Check out Horn Legend, great gear, and Socorro Tequila, great tequila. So hope you guys enjoyed this edition of All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. We'll see you next Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time on All Access AM. Thanks for watching, everyone.